She was checking her old phone and found a message she never sent. "I know what you did." It was sent to her best friend's number, a day before her murder. I hadn't turned on this phone for over a year. It just lay in a drawer, forgotten, unnecessary. But that evening I needed some old photos, so I took it out. When the screen lit up, I saw a single unread notification. I opened the messages and froze. "I know what you did." Sent from my number. To Lauren's number. The day before her murder. My head started spinning. I hadn't written this. I wasn't even using this phone that day. I checked the call log. There was another strange detail. The last call from this phone was made on the night of her death. At 2:17 a.m. It lasted 46 seconds. I dialed that number. An answering machine. I tried to remember where I was that day. Lauren and I had met in the morning for coffee. She mentioned someone was following her. I laughed then, said she was reading too many detective novels. The next day, they found her in the park. I felt my fingers growing cold. I called the detective who handled her case. "Do you have any new information?" I asked. He sighed. "The case was closed a month ago." "What? Suicide?" I nearly dropped the phone. It couldn't have been suicide. Lauren was afraid someone was following her. We checked everything. There was no one around. I fell silent. He paused for a moment, then added, "Although there is one strange detail. On the night of her death, she called someone." "Who?" He gave me the number. It was my number. My heart stopped. "Did you listen to the recording?" "No. There was a system failure. The file disappeared. I couldn't breathe." I drove to her house. No one answered the door, but there was an envelope on the doorstep. Inside was a photograph. Me. Standing at her door. Date, the night of her death. If I wasn't there, then who was? The cool autumn air seeped through my jacket as I stood on my apartment balcony, staring at the old Nokia phone in my hand. Memories flooded back. Lauren and I had bought matching phones our sophomore year of college. "So we'll always be connected," she'd said with that bright smile of hers. Now she was gone, and I was holding a piece of our past that suddenly felt like a ticking bomb. I went back inside, closing the door against the chill. My apartment was small but comfortable, or it had been until tonight. Now every shadow seemed to hide secrets. I sat at my kitchen table, the harsh overhead light making the phone's screen look even more accusatory. "I know what you did." Those 5 words kept playing in my head like a broken record. I checked the timestamp again, 9:45 p.m., October 12th. I remembered that day clearly. I'd been at a work conference in Chicago, hundreds of miles from Lauren. I'd even posted photos on social media. There was no way I could have sent that text. I pulled my laptop closer and logged into my email, searching for my hotel reservation and flight details from last year. The confirmation email showed I'd checked into the Palmer House at 4:30 p.m. on October 12th. I'd even kept the receipt from room service that evening, pasta primavera and a glass of Pinot Grigio at 8:15 p.m. So who sent that message? My hands trembled slightly as I scrolled through the rest of the messages on the old phone. Nothing unusual except for that one text. And then that call, 2:17 a.m. on October 13th, 46 seconds. I closed my eyes, trying to remember where my old phone had been during that trip. I'd switched to a new iPhone the week before, leaving the Nokia in my desk drawer. My roommate at the time, Tina, had been home, but she wouldn't have known my passcode. Besides, why would she send such a message to Lauren? Lauren and I had been friends since childhood. We knew everything about each other, or so I thought. Her last few months had been difficult. She'd broken up with her boyfriend, Mark, after finding suspicious texts on his phone. She'd also been having trouble at work, something about missing files and accusations. "There's something happening, Ellie," she'd said during our last coffee meeting. "Someone's trying to frame me." I took a sip of water, trying to calm my racing thoughts. Detective Reeves had said it was suicide, but Lauren would never. She had plans, dreams. She was starting therapy, looking for a new job. People planning suicide don't do that. I checked the time, just after midnight. Too late to call anyone, but sleep was out of the question. I opened my laptop again and searched for any news articles about Lauren's death. The headlines were sparse: local accountant found dead in Riverside Park, police ruled death as suicide, woman, 29, takes own life. Reading through the articles, I learned little more than I already knew. Lauren had been found by a jogger early on October 14. No signs of struggle. A note had been found in her pocket, but its contents were never revealed to the public. A note? Lauren hadn't mentioned writing a note. And Detective Reeves hadn't mentioned it either. I grabbed my jacket and car keys. It was reckless, probably stupid, but I had to see her house again. It had been sitting empty since her death. Her parents lived in Arizona and hadn't decided what to do with it yet. The streets were nearly empty as I drove across town to Lauren's small bungalow. Yellow police tape no longer crossed the doorway, but the house had an abandoned feel to it. Dead leaves had collected on the porch, and a stack of mail and flyers spilled out of the mailbox. I parked across the street, just watching for a while. What was I expecting to find? The police had surely gone through everything. Still, I had to try. Lauren deserved more than being dismissed as just another suicide statistic. As I approached the front door, moonlight glinted off something metallic in the overgrown grass. I knelt down and found a key, Lauren's spare that she always kept hidden under a fake rock. The rock was gone, but somehow the key remained. My heart pounded as I inserted the key into the lock. It turned smoothly, and the door creaked open. The air inside was stale, untouched. I fumbled for the light switch, but the electricity had been turned off. Using my phone's flashlight, I navigated through the familiar layout. Everything looked normal: dishes still in the sink, a half-empty coffee mug on the counter, mail scattered on the table. It was as if Lauren had just stepped out and would return any moment. I moved to her home office. This was where she'd spent most of her time in those final weeks, frantically working on something she wouldn't fully explain to me. The desk was cluttered with papers, sticky notes, and file folders. Her laptop was gone, taken by the police, I presumed. A framed photo of us caught my eye, taken last summer at the beach, both of us laughing as waves crashed around our knees. I picked it up, a lump forming in my throat. The glass was cracked, a thin line running between our smiling faces. As I set the photo down, I noticed something peculiar. A small notebook had been wedged beneath the frame, as if intentionally hidden. I pulled it out. Lauren's handwriting filled the pages. It was some kind of journal or log. The entries were dated, the last one from October 13th, the day she died. "E still won't believe me. I showed her the emails, but she thinks I'm overreacting. But they're getting closer. The same car has been parked outside for 3 days now. Black sedan, tinted windows. When I approach, it drives away. If something happens to me, it wasn't suicide. Check the files. M knows." My blood ran cold. That was me. She'd shown me emails. I had no memory of this. And who was M? Mark, her ex. Or someone else? The sound of a car engine outside snapped me to attention. Headlights swept across the windows, then went dark. I dimmed my phone light and peered through the blinds. A black sedan had parked across the street. The same spot where I'd been parked just minutes before. Panic gripped me. I slipped the notebook into my jacket pocket and moved quietly toward the back door. The wooden floorboards creaked under my weight. I froze, listening. The front door handle jiggled. Someone was trying to get in. I darted through the kitchen and out the back door, not bothering to lock it behind me. The backyard was small, bordered by a wooden fence. I vaulted over it, ignoring the tear I heard in my jeans, and found myself in an alley. Running as quietly as possible, I made my way 2 blocks over before I dared to slow down. My breath came in ragged gasps, my heart threatening to burst from my chest. I pulled out my phone to call for help, but who could I trust? The police thought it was suicide. Detective Reeves would think I was just a grieving friend who couldn't accept reality. I needed evidence. I needed to understand what Lauren had discovered that had gotten her killed. Because I was now certain, Lauren had been murdered. And someone had used my old phone to do it. Someone who wanted to frame me, or at least create a connection between me and her death. I found my car where I'd left it and got in, locking the doors immediately. As I started the engine, I checked my rearview mirror. The black sedan had reappeared at the end of the street. I pulled away from the curb, trying to drive normally despite my panic. At the intersection, I turned right, then made a series of random turns, watching to see if the sedan followed. It did. Think, Ellie, think, I muttered to myself. I needed somewhere safe to go, somewhere to regroup and think. Not my apartment. If they knew about Lauren's house, they probably knew where I lived too. I drove to an all-night diner on the outskirts of town. The parking lot was well lit and had a few other cars, safety in numbers. I parked, watching my mirrors. The sedan drove past slowly but didn't turn in. Inside, I took a booth with a clear view of the entrance and ordered coffee I didn't want. My hands shook as I pulled out Lauren's notebook. The entries went back several months, becoming increasingly paranoid, or so I would have thought if I hadn't just been chased by a mysterious car. Lauren had documented strange occurrences, missing files at work, unusual phone calls, feeling watched. One name kept appearing. M reached out again. Says he has proof. The waitress refilled my untouched coffee. You okay, honey? You look like you've seen a ghost. I forced a smile. Just a long night. Tell me about it, she said, nodding toward the window. That car's been circling for 10 minutes. Looking for someone, I guess. My smile froze. What car? Black one. There it goes again. I glanced out the window. The sedan was making another slow pass. Is there a back exit? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. She gave me an odd look but pointed toward the kitchen. Through there, past the freezers. But it sets off an alarm unless you're staff. Thanks. I left a $20 bill for a $3 coffee and walked calmly toward the restrooms. Once out of sight, I darted into the kitchen. A startled cook looked up from prepping breakfast ingredients. Hey, you can't. Emergency, I gasped, already pushing past him toward the back door. The alarm blared as I burst outside into the pre-dawn air. I ran across an empty lot behind the diner, heading for a residential area. The sounds of the alarm faded behind me. I slowed to a walk, trying to blend in, though the streets were mostly empty at 4 a.m. My phone rang, making me jump. Unknown number. I almost rejected it, but some instinct made me answer. Hello. My voice was barely a whisper. Ellie. It wasn't a question. The voice was male, unfamiliar. Who is this? A friend of Lauren's. He paused. And Mark's. Mark? Lauren's ex. Former boyfriend, yes. But more importantly, her former colleague. I hadn't known they worked together. Lauren had been vague about their relationship. What do you want? To help you. And to finish what Lauren started. Another pause. She told me about you. Said you'd be the one to contact if anything happened to her. She never mentioned you to me. For your protection. He sounded sincere, but I'd learned not to trust appearances. We need to meet. Not on the phone. How do I know you're not the one who's been following me? Because I've been watching the people who are watching you. The black sedan, license plate THX 1138. Registered to a shell company called Meridian Security. They're contracted by Neocorp. The name rang a bell. Neocorp was where Lauren had worked. Where she'd discovered those missing files. Why should I trust you? Because Lauren did. And because in about 30 seconds, that sedan is going to turn onto the street you're on. There's a blue house with a detached garage 3 doors down on your left. The side door is unlocked. Get inside, now. The line went dead. I stood frozen for a moment, then heard the distinctive sound of a car engine. Without thinking further, I ran toward the blue house. The garage door was old, made of wooden panels. The side entrance was nearly invisible in the shadows. I tried the handle, unlocked, as promised. I slipped inside just as headlights swept the street. The garage was empty except for some gardening tools and stacked boxes. I crouched behind them, hardly daring to breathe. The sedan slowed, then stopped. A door opened and closed. Footsteps approached the garage. I looked around desperately for a weapon, finding only a rusted garden trowel. I gripped it tightly, pressing myself against the wall. The side door opened. A beam of light swept the interior. Ellie? A whisper, in the same voice from the phone. Here, I managed to respond. The figure stepped inside, closing the door. The flashlight lowered, and I could make out a man's face, early 30s, with glasses and a serious expression. I'm Daniel, he said. We don't have much time. What's happening? My voice sounded strange to my own ears. Lauren discovered something at Neocorp. Something in the accounting files that wasn't supposed to be found. He spoke rapidly, checking his watch. Money laundering, millions of dollars. She gathered evidence, backed it up. The missing files she mentioned. Yes. But they weren't missing, they were hidden. Neocorp has a subsidiary that handles special projects for government contractors. Black budget stuff. And they killed her for that? Made it look like suicide? Daniel nodded grimly. They needed to know what she'd found and who she'd told. That's why they sent that text from your phone. But how? It was in my drawer. Are you sure? When was the last time you actually saw it before finding it yesterday? I thought back. I'd switched phones and tossed the old one in my desk drawer. But after that, I don't know. My apartment was broken into about 6 months ago. Nothing seemed missing. They took your phone, sent the message, then returned it later. Standard procedure to create false evidence. They wanted Lauren to think you were involved, to isolate her. A car drove slowly past the garage. We both froze until the sound faded. We need to go, Daniel said. I have Lauren's backup drive. But I need your help to decrypt it. She used a passphrase only you would know. And once we do that, we take it to someone who can help, not the local police. Someone I trust. I hesitated. The photo I found at Lauren's door. It showed me there the night she died. Photoshopped, Daniel said confidently. They're good at manufacturing evidence. Something about his certainty bothered me. How do you know about the photo? I never told anyone. Daniel's expression changed slightly. Lauren mentioned they might try something like that. No, I said slowly, backing away. She couldn't have known that. And you still haven't explained how you knew which drawer my phone was in. His eyes hardened. Ellie, we don't have time for this. You worked with them, didn't you? You helped them get to Lauren. The realization hit me like a physical blow. You're M. Not Mark, Michael. Daniel Michael, something. Lauren mentioned you in her notes. She trusted you, and you betrayed her. His hand moved to his jacket pocket. I was trying to help her. Things got complicated. You stole my phone. The pieces were falling into place. You sent that text to isolate her, just like you said. But not because Neocorp wanted to, because you did. It wasn't supposed to end like it did, he said, his voice tight. She was supposed to bring the evidence to me, not threaten to go public. I tried to reason with her. At 2:17 a.m. That call from my phone, it was you. You called her from my phone so she would trust the caller. Daniel pulled out a gun. I didn't kill her. I swear. But she wouldn't listen. She was going to expose everything, ruin years of work. I just wanted the files. Then who did kill her? His expression told me everything. It was an accident. She was hysterical, threatening to go to the press. We struggled. She fell. The trowel was still in my hand. Not much of a weapon against a gun, but it was all I had. So you staged it as a suicide, I said, trying to keep him talking while I inched toward the door. But you couldn't find her backup drive. She was clever. Too clever. His mouth twisted. I thought you might lead me to it, but you never visited her house until tonight. The photo was bait. I knew you'd come eventually. And now? Now you're going to help me find that drive. The gun gestured toward me. For old time's sake. For Lauren. Don't you dare say her name, I spat. You killed her and tried to frame me. A sound outside made us both turn, blue and red lights flashed through the cracks in the garage door. Someone pounded on the main entrance. Police. Open up. Daniel's face contorted with rage. What did you do? I hadn't done anything, I'd been running, hiding. Then I remembered the diner alarm. The waitress must have seen which way I went, reported a suspicious person. In that moment of distraction, I threw the trowel at Daniel's face and lunged for the side door. The gun went off, the sound deafening in the small space. Something hot grazed my arm, but adrenaline pushed me forward. I burst outside, screaming, "Help! He has a gun!" Police officers swarmed around the garage. I fell to my knees, hands up. He killed Lauren Wilson. He has a gun. What happened next was chaos, shouting, another gunshot, officers rushing the garage. I was pulled to safety behind a patrol car, my arm bleeding but not badly. In the end, they took Daniel alive. His real name was Daniel Michael Kerr, a financial analyst at Neocorp who had been helping launder money through government contracts. Lauren had discovered the operation while auditing files. She'd trusted Daniel at first, not realizing he was part of the scheme. The evidence was all there, on Lauren's backup drive, which was found in her house behind a loose baseboard, and in Daniel's own records. My old phone was recovered from his car, along with equipment used to break into my apartment months earlier. Detective Reeves apologized for not investigating more thoroughly. The suicide note had seemed genuine, and there were no obvious signs of foul play. But Lauren's notebook changed everything. She documented her suspicions, her findings, her fear. As for the photograph of me at Lauren's door, a skillful fake, created using an old picture from social media and editing software. 2 weeks later, I stood at Lauren's grave, placing fresh flowers against her headstone. The case wasn't completely closed, Neocorp executives were under investigation, and there would be trials, testimony. But at least now I knew the truth. Lauren hadn't killed herself. And I hadn't sent that text. My new phone buzzed in my pocket, a text from Detective Reeves with an update on the case. Some messages can be trusted, I thought. But I'd never look at an old phone the same way again. As I turned to leave, I noticed a figure watching from a distance, an older man in a dark coat. He nodded once in my direction, then walked away. I never found out who he was, perhaps another player in the complex web that had caught and killed my friend. The mystery of Lauren's death was solved, but some questions would always remain. In the shadowy world she had uncovered, perhaps that was inevitable. Not all mysteries have clean endings, not all questions get answered. But Lauren had the truth on her side in the end. And sometimes, that has to be enough.